Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, who is Melony.
Can I move this? Yeah. Okay. Doesn't move. My name's Melony. I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank you. I'm tall. I want to thank Patty for asking me to speak tonight, and I want to thank Paul for giving her my number. So if I don't do well tonight, blame Paul, don't blame Patty. She hasn't heard me before, so. It really is an honor to speak at an AA meeting. I want to thank that first speaker, Adam, wherever he went, for getting me out of myself long enough to listen to him. Oh, there you are. Did a good job. And I want to thank my friend Carrie for coming out and supporting with me tonight. We've been friends for a long time, and one of the things that I got in sobriety were long-term relationships, which I didn't think I wanted when I got here. I wanted him, I wanted it, I wanted that, but I didn't want relationships or friendships. And because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have people in my life for a long time. And to get the stats out of the way, my sobriety date is June 10th of 1992, so I just turned 19 years sober. Sometimes people go, well, good for you, and I say, good for everybody else. I mean, I don't really, when I'm loaded and when I'm drunk, I don't care. That's what I really liked about drinking and using, was that I didn't care. And the unfortunate thing that happened when I got sober is that I started to care. I couldn't do all of these things that I used to do when I was drunk because it started to hurt. And it took me a while to realize that if I slept with your boyfriend, it didn't feel so good. And so I had to learn. Enough said. I don't do that anymore. They taught me in rehab that they said, what are the three things, what's the one thing that'll keep you sober? They said, steps are not going to keep you sober, God's not going to keep you sober, what's going to keep you sober? Being honest is what's going to keep you sober. Now, I since have changed my opinion of that. I think you need all of that, but what I needed to learn was something more besides cash register honesty when I got here. But just to get into what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now in a general way, I came from not a great family. I know that's not everybody's story. It's not why I'm an alcoholic. I have two younger sisters that are not alcoholics. I had, it was a crazy childhood. My mother was an artist. She's really, really smart, but she's certifiably mentally ill. And I had a dad who was tremendously abusive and not around a lot except at nighttime when he shouldn't have been there. So I didn't realize how angry and unhappy I was until I drank and felt better. And so what my childhood was like was my dad was a college professor, and we had money for furniture, but we didn't seem to have any. We had a bed in the living room where the couch should have been. We didn't have dressers. We had orange crates with like 1970s wallpaper to put our clothes in. We slept in cribs till I was 5 years old and drank out of bottles. And at one point, I came home from kindergarten or first grade, and I had a bed, and I said, why? Why do we have beds? And my mother said, well, Liz Weber, oh, this is being taped, isn't it? Well, Liz said you girls couldn't sleep in cribs anymore, and I had to get you some beds. Like, she just couldn't be bothered. And, my mom is a product of what she was raised in. She came from a very sick family, and she didn't mean to be like that. She just was like that. It would almost be easier if she was an alcoholic, because then she would have a solution that I could give her or that I could understand. But another thing that I learned in sobriety was that it wasn't other people's job to understand me. It was my job to understand them, and it was nobody else's job to understand my alcoholism and make allowances for that. I had to make allowances for the fact that I'm an alcoholic and understand where you're coming from. So that's kind of how I grew up, was in that sort of crazy household. And I remember, being 7 and getting what I called the swallow sickness, which I would have so much anxiety at night for reasons that I now understand, but I just couldn't go to sleep. I kept swallowing my saliva and swallowing my saliva, and it was a terrible thing. And I didn't know how to make friends. My mom didn't want to have other kids over because she didn't want to deal with the other parents, and so. When I took my first drink at 14 years old, I had made one friend. Her name was Amy, and I met her in dance class, and she had a mom, but she didn't have a dad. And she offered me some Tanqueray gin, and I drank it. Now, I had previously refused alcohol in the past. I had been to dance camps, and people had offered me beer, and I would say, no, drinking's bad. And there wasn't a lot of alcoholism around me that I remember, although my great-grandmother was a morphine addict, and my grandmother was a pill popper, and there's a lot of alcoholism in my extended family. But I didn't remember drinking as being bad, but I just refused it because I knew that wasn't the right thing to do. And the other thing that was so confusing was that it's like nothing was ever good enough at home. I know a lot of people relate to that, but I was never pretty enough, or I was either too smart or not smart enough, or not pretty enough, or not wearing the right clothes, and it was just nothing was ever balanced. And so when Amy offered me this Tanqueray gin and I drank it, I felt different. I did not know I was feeling bad until I felt that much better. And from then on, I had a purpose. I was going to party every single weekend. And I like to say that my drinking career is characterized by me crossing countless lines I said I would never cross, and that another part of alcoholism is fun, and then fun with problems, and then problems. And so I had a lot of fun for a really long time. There are some people that say my best day drinking is better than my worst day sober, and that is not the case for me. I have had some terrible days in sobriety, and have wished I were dead. But I had a lot of fun drinking, and what alcohol did for me was it allowed me to relax, it allowed me to have a good time, it allowed me not to worry about my weight. I sat on Amy's bed with her and ate a box of Triscuits, and I didn't worry about a thing. And another thing that alcohol did for me was it allowed me to kiss a boy. It allowed me to have a boy put their arm around me. I previously flinched when anybody touched me, and I developed my first crush, started following him around, and I learned later on that that's called stalking. I can't do that in sobriety either. So that's the kind of things that alcohol did for me. It helped me not to care. I got my first boyfriend when I was 16, because I had a little bit more confidence now, but it was somebody else's boyfriend. And that's the thing about alcoholism, is that that selfishness and self-centeredness. I don't care about what I do and how it affects you. I just want what I want, and the thought of how it hurts you, it doesn't matter. And if I did think about it, I really didn't care, because I would always rationalize and justify everything that I did that I kind of knew was wrong. Like, for instance, I had this boyfriend who had a girlfriend. It was like, well, she's not treating him very well, and she's probably just jealous anyway, and she doesn't deserve him, so I'm the easier, softer way, I guess. I don't know. So, in high school, it's easier to get drugs. So, I was always on a diet. So, one of the things I said I would never do was do drugs. But, by the time I'm 16 years old, I'm saving my lunch money. And back then, in 1984, you could get nickel bags of pot. I don't know if you could still get those now, but does that mean you can or you can't? No, you can't. Okay. So I would save my lunch money, and I would smoke weed before school, during school, and after school, and that was a lot easier to get. And I remember the first time when I didn't have something, when I was kind of used to, I was drinking on the weekends and having a great time and staying out all night and fooling my parents and pulling the wool over everybody's eyes. I mean, I really wasn't, but I felt like some big rebel. And I was getting loaded, and I remember the first time I didn't have something, and it was terrible. Me and my friend Diana went on looking for weed, and in this little town that I was from, you could always find somebody that had something, and we couldn't find anything. And that night, we're scraping the pipe, just trying to find the resin to smoke it, just to find something. That restless, irritable, and discontent, like I needed something to take the edge off at 16 years old. And I'd also developed an eating disorder by this time because I was not because I was a ballet dancer, but in conjunction with being a ballet dancer. And so I'd count my calories, and vodka had the least amount of calories. And so I allowed myself 600 calories a day, and that was a bottle of vodka. So that was, I would drink that sometimes before school. And by the time I was almost 17, I was institutionalized because I'd run away from home. Another thing that alcohol did for me was it allowed me to get out of that hospital because I wanted to go to the prom with a guy who probably didn't really like me, but knew he would get somewhere, I'm sure. And I didn't really like him either, but we were going to party. And so I got out of that eating disorder unit because I wanted to drink and use. So that's another way that alcohol sort of saved me. And I like to say that alcohol and drugs saved my life, because if I wouldn't have found them, I would probably be dead. Everything was so bad and everything was so confusing that I really needed a way out. I needed something, and I'm really glad that I found that. And then it stopped working. It didn't matter how much I drank and used, and then, so then there's fun and fun with problems, and I'm getting in trouble all the time, and my drinking took a turn for the worse when I was, some of the problems that started to develop, the mini problems, like you're getting grounded all the time and your grades go down, but those are all manageable. Like, who cares about grades, and who cares if you're grounded? I'll just sneak out. There's all these manageable problems. Who cares if you're getting in trouble with other girls for flirting with their boyfriend? I mean, that's manageable. The fun of drinking and using really outweighs that. So the other problem started to happen was when I was 18 years old. We had just gotten back from England. And I had a boyfriend, and this time it was, one of the other lines I said I would never cross was it was my friend's boyfriend. So I had a boyfriend, and we got really, really drunk one night, and I got assaulted really, really badly. And I didn't understand what had happened to me at the time. It was really awful. And that kind of stuff was going on at home, but it wasn't going on in my peer group. And alcohol became the solution after that. Alcohol and drugs were what took away the pain. I've put it together that if I drank something and if I used something, I felt better. Not just I felt better in general, but that pain went away. And the other problems I had was that I couldn't hold a job. I was working at a Denny's and as a hostess, and that was hard for me because I would stay up all night. It was, the late 80s, and foo-foo drinks were really in, like toasted almonds and daiquiris and wine coolers. So I would drink all that at night and then get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and ride my bike to work, and at 7 o'clock to be a hostess at Denny's. And they didn't like it very much when I talked back to the boss, and I did, and when I yelled at my boss or had a bad attitude or was late. And I learned that I got fired from jobs, not because of my inability to do the job, more because of my inability to get along with other people. And I've had to learn in Alcoholics Anonymous to play well with others and to be a worker among workers and a friend among friends. And I still have that problem today. I get really mad. There's one girl at my job that I do not like at all. I hate her. She has no spark or charisma at all. I mean, it's like, and she gets on my nerves. And when she gets on and I can be kind of a bitch to her. And you know what? Even if she's doing something wrong, my sponsor told me my first real sponsor was Suzanne B. And she used to say, Melanie, the problem is not the problem is your reaction to the problem, because I will always make any problem worse because of my reaction that is usually much bigger. So if I have a resentment at somebody, it gets worse if I talk to everybody in the world about it. The first thing I need to do is stop talking about it. And the resentment would pray, maybe talk to my sponsor, and it usually goes away. But so I've had to learn to really act better than I feel. And that was another thing that I learned in sobriety, is that it didn't matter. I loved there was one birthday, a girl for 3 years who said it didn't matter how I felt. And I had to learn that in Alcoholics Anonymous, that nobody cared how I felt. That, I could disappear, and yeah, some people would be sad for a little while, but Alcoholics Anonymous would go on, the world would go on whether or not I was there, and it didn't matter how I felt, it mattered what I did. It didn't matter what my intentions were. Oh, I didn't mean to, sleep with your husband, it just happened. And no, it just didn't just happen. I did it. So I was judged. I'm judged on my actions here. So I'm judged on my actions at work, too. So I've had to learn to act better than I feel and grit my teeth and be nice to this girl that I don't like. And guess what? When I behave better, I feel better about her. And she's not changing. I'm the one that's changing. So it's a continuous process, I'm finding. By the time I'm 21 years old, I'm living with this guy, and I'm working in this restaurant. I've been getting fired from jobs, and I'm getting into all kinds of trouble, and I've been in and out of therapy for an eating disorder just because I'm depressed all the time, and I'm living with this guy, and I'm cheating on him, and I don't mean to be doing any of this. I don't mean to be mean to people at work. I don't mean to, I'm coming home in other guys' clothes, and I'm losing my car, and this is like the one person that really, really cares about me, and he's giving me chance after chance after chance, and I don't mean to be doing this, but I'm doing it, and I don't know how to stop. And all of this is centered around alcohol. And some of the things that I would do, I did some crazy things. I mean, I would climb trees when I was drunk and then say to the guy next to me, catch me, and just jump out of a tree onto them. I jumped off a roof. I was at a party once, and I just said, catch me, to some guy, and I jumped off this roof. And, I don't do that today either. I parachuted in sobriety. That was really scary. I'll never do that again. My therapist said to me, he goes, you just need to take some risks. You take a lot of risks, but the wrong kind of risks. And not that kind of risk either. But anyway, so I'm seeing a therapist because I'm really depressed all the time, and I think I have mono, because that would make sense. It's, I'm kissing too many people, and I have mono, and, I know that's the reason. And I start seeing a doctor. He sends me to a therapist, and I'm unable to communicate with my therapist. I had lost the ability to talk about how I never really had that ability, but I was losing my ability to be articulate. I didn't really have that ability either, but I just I just wasn't talking, but I would hand him my journal, and my journal would say things like, I got so wasted last night, I had so much fun, I don't remember a thing. And that was every single entry. And he would point out to me that normal drinkers don't do that all the time. That I might be an alcoholic, and I was like, no, alcoholics are like people that drink in the park out of paper bags. And by the time I'm 22 years old, I'm carrying a bottle of tequila in a paper bag and drinking in the park with the busboy from work. And I'm starting to do things that I'm, really ashamed of, obviously, and my solution to that is to start burning myself with cigarettes. And I started feeling so bad all of the time, like I just wanted to die, because I'm doing these things that I'm ashamed of. My life is completely unmanageable. I'm getting, I park in front of this restaurant at work, and I can't even make it to the meter right outside to put money in the parking meter, and I would get $500 worth of parking tickets at one time, and these parking tickets in this small town are $7 a piece. So a couple of times I would accumulate $500 of parking tickets just because I couldn't make it. And I mean, not only am I screwing up on all my relationships and I'm losing friends, but I can't even put money in the meter, and I can't make it to school. And I would try. I would say, okay, this time I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna register. I'm not gonna drink. I'm not gonna throw out my food. I'm not gonna do any of that. I'm just gonna go to school and do good. And that would last a couple weeks. And after that couple weeks, I would start to get that itchy feeling, that feeling you've got to have something, and powerlessness over alcohol isn't me white knuckling, going, I have to have a drink, I have to have a drink. It's me wanting to stop drinking, and then 2 weeks later, or 3 days later, or 1 month later, deciding that, I really want to, at the summer, I'll just stop later. I mean, forgetting all of the misery that my alcoholism was bringing me, and just change my mind. Powerlessness over alcohol, that first step is me changing my mind. I don't know how to keep my mind changed on sobriety. It keeps going back to drinking, and I have no control over, no matter what kind of decision I make, 3 days later, it'll go back without Alcoholics Anonymous. I know that there's people that get sober without Alcoholics Anonymous, but I tried everything, and I couldn't do it. And I finally ended up in French Hospital in the psychiatric ward because, I've been burning myself with cigarettes, and that wasn't the solution. I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous that burning myself with cigarettes, by the way, is on one hand, it's really sick, but on the other hand, it's a big pity party, because I would do these things that I was ashamed of, and I would then burn myself with cigarettes so that you could see how sorry I was for hurting you, and then you would feel sorry for me because I just hurt myself. Oh, look how bad Melony it feels. She hurt herself. Oh, poor thing. Oh, it doesn't matter what she did to us. I mean, that was what I was going for. That's total self-centeredness, and so it wasn't that I was sick, it's that I was just really, really self-centered. I didn't burn myself on my hip. I burned myself on my arm where everybody could see it and feel sorry for me. I don't do that today either. I don't hurt myself in sobriety. That's one of the things, that I don't pinch myself, I don't hit myself, and that took a couple years, because I would get, things wouldn't go my way, and I would like pinch myself or hurt myself, and I don't do that today anymore. I don't throw up my food today. I don't cheat today. I have a great life today. I've learned how not to do all of those things in Alcoholics Anonymous. Therapy really helped, but it was Alcoholics Anonymous that gave me a basis so that I could get better in therapy. So I went to the psychiatric ward. They suggested I stop drinking and using, and I didn't know how not to do it. And by the time I stayed sober for a few weeks. I'm always getting sober for a couple weeks here, a couple months. And at 23, 24 years old, my mom writes me this letter, and she said, "You're no longer welcome around the house. Dr. Yelverton, my therapist, doesn't want to see you anymore because you don't want to stop drinking, you don't want to go to AA, and I don't want to watch you die." And my mom had never said anything like that before. She doesn't tend to be that lucid. Or that clearly somebody had given her those words, or, whatever. She told me the truth because she didn't want to watch me die. And so I checked myself into cottage care in Santa Barbara because this other town that I was from wasn't nice enough for me. I was kind of a snob. I had to go to Santa Barbara to get sober. And what they taught me there was that people that don't go to meetings drink. I kind of went to meetings. I was there for a couple weeks. I kind of went to meetings for 3 years. I didn't really know how to work this program. I didn't have the benefit of good sponsorship. So I would go to a couple meetings here and there. I'd go there late, leave early. But if there was a cute guy, I'd stay. You don't have to be sincere. It doesn't matter why you're here. It didn't matter why I was there. But I would come late and leave early. I didn't have commitments. I didn't. I just didn't know what to do, but I was able to stay sober. I was living with my boyfriend, and they were growing weed in the backyard and brewing beer on the stove, and I would walk to a meeting. So you can stay sober anywhere. But for 3 years, I didn't really work this, and my life got worse. You took away my solution, which was drugs and alcohol, and I'm left with life, and I'm left with the way that I feel and no solution for living, and I moved down to Los Angeles. I didn't really talk about it with anybody. I just moved down here to be a movie star, and show everybody that was mean to me what I was going to do. And, within a month, I had broken up with him, and I had met him, and then we were going to move in together after hooking up for 3 days. At 3 days, we were going to move in together. He was going to stop smoking pot for me, and I was so touched because nobody had ever done that before. And he shouldn't have either because he went a little nuts. That relationship was over in 5 days, and it took me 7 months to get over that. I used to drive by his house until my sponsor said, "You can't do that anymore." I met Suzanne when I was 3 years sober. And this woman saved my life. She took me through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. She taught me that if I changed my actions, my feelings would change. And that maybe if I would change my behavior at work, I would have a job. And that maybe if I didn't hang all over these guys that didn't want me to hang all over them, they might not yell at me. It turned out that I placed myself in a position to be hurt. It wasn't your fault. Nobody owed me anything. Nobody owed me a living. If I was behaving badly, guess what? People were going to react to that. And it wasn't their fault. It was mine. I had to take responsibility for how I was behaving. And she taught me to attack my problems on the flank, which meant that I didn't deal with the problem at hand, but what I had to do was go to 5 meetings, and I had to drive out to her house in Chatsworth, and I had to get a job, at some little restaurant in Topanga when I lived in West Hollywood, because I was supposed to be self-supporting. And I had to pray every day. I had to call her whether I felt like it or not. She taught me how to work a 4-step, and in that 4-step, I learned that that I had a part in every single thing that happened to me, that I was not a victim, and that, like I said earlier, the world didn't owe me anything. And the things that happened to me when I was a kid weren't necessarily my fault, but it was my responsibility to deal with them as an adult, and that I didn't need to blame every guy in the universe because my father was abusive. It wasn't their fault, and it wasn't every girl's fault that my mom was crazy. I didn't have to take it out on the whole world, and nobody was supposed to fix me either. It wasn't my boyfriend's job to make me happy. It wasn't my friend's job to make me feel better. It was my job. That sobriety started with me, and that if I wanted friends, I had to walk up to you and ask how you were doing and get your phone number and call you and talk about you and not talk about myself. When I was 5 years sober, my sponsor asked me to start praying for the fellowship that I craved because I was really, really lonely. I was going to meetings and had commitments, but I wasn't really hooked in with any one group, and I had to start picking women that I liked and start calling them and asking how they were doing and not talking about myself. She used to tell me that my selfishness was going to kill me, and I had to get a commitment at central office and start working the phones there. I had to get a panel at H&I, and if it wasn't inconvenient, it wasn't service. And it turned out that there was nothing really wrong with me. The problem was that I'm just selfish and self-centeredness. And when I started thinking about you and what I could bring to the situation, I started to feel better. And at 6 years of sobriety, the pain started to stop. I mean, it stopped in the beginning, but it really stopped at 6 years, where I didn't feel like dying most of the time. When I was 8 years sober, I started having flashbacks and nightmares, and my relationships with men were difficult, and I would cry at inopportune times and not know why. And it turned out that out of that 4-step, it turned out that I needed to seek some outside help. And it was really, really, really hard. This kind of work was hard. And how that related to therapy, how that relates to Alcoholics Anonymous, was that I would go to therapy and talk about the stuff that I didn't want to talk about, and I was really angry. I was really afraid to get angry because the big book says the grouch and the brainstorm are not for us. But it turned out I was already really angry. I was just taking it out on the road. I was taking it out on, I broke a light. I found a stick. I was so mad that I couldn't find my keys. I started beating on my bed with a stick and broke the light above me. And so that's the kind of anger that would come out, and it had nothing to do with the situation going on. And so I had to do a lot of work, and I would go to a meeting right after therapy, and I wasn't allowed to talk to a whole lot of people about it because it wasn't your problem that I was going through all of this. It wasn't your job to absorb my pain and just handle it. My job was to continue to go to meetings and be of service and take people to meetings and talk to newcomers and see what I could bring to the situation. I did that for 8 years. And I'm a free woman today. I don't have those same problems at all. I've had really, really good relationships, healthy relationships in sobriety. And when I was 13 years sober, I decided to switch careers. And at the same time, I met him. And, kind of the old behavior again. It's like we moved in together right away. And, he was my best friend, and he was sober. He was only 2 years sober, so I might not do that again. But he worked a good program, and I thought that this was it, and we were having a great time, and I was starting my career, and 2 years later, it was over, and it was over really suddenly, and I had to move out. And I had no money in the bank, and my career was sort of distracted by all of this other relationship stuff. And at 15 years sober, I realized that it didn't really matter what came down the pike, because this was really, really painful. Like the breakup was really sudden, and I didn't understand why it happened. And I was at work one night, and I realized that no matter what happened, I was going to be okay, and that there was a power greater than myself. And I had always sort of believed in a power greater than myself. My sponsor told me that I had to just act as if. And sooner or later, I would believe. And that evening, I knew, the big book says we trust and rely on a power greater than myself. I believed, but I didn't trust. And I knew everything was going to be okay. And, a lot of things fell into place. Like somebody walked into the restaurant that I was working at, because I was working 2 jobs. I was trying to build this career, and I'm working at night. And this guy walked into this restaurant and offered me a job at his restaurant. And, for 2 years, I worked like 70 hours a week, just pummeling and going to meetings and paying off all this debt that I had. And I don't have to work 2 jobs anymore. I started working with a team of people in my profession that I thought were the best people. I never thought I would get a job with them, but because I would show up, whether I had work to do or not, I would show up with a good attitude, and I would just try to make things happen. It wasn't anybody else's job to give me work. I had to earn it. And because of that, I'm part of a team of people that I really love, and I have a really good job today. I paid off all my debt, and well, except for one. There's one debt I have to pay off. I paid off all my debt. I have a savings. I bought a nicer car for work, and I have a lot of friends today. I sponsor a lot of women, and 3 of them are here tonight. And it turns out that it feels so much better for me to love you than to have you love me. And my first big spiritual awakening was when I was 5 years sober, and somebody walked into my women's meeting and something good had happened to them, and it had nothing to do with me, and I was happy for them. I could honestly start feeling for you. And when I was drinking, I didn't care. So I have a really, really great life today. I don't have any problems today. As long as I go to regular meetings on regular meeting days, and I have commitments, and I sponsor people, and I have a sponsor that I talk to on a regular basis. I pray and meditate out of the big book and do an inventory when I'm supposed to. I have a choice on whether I stay sober or not. So thanks for letting me share.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.